Jesse Bradica. Jesse, I've enabled your microphone, so when you're ready, please unmute. State your name and address and begin your comments, please.
Jesse Bradica, 1821 Mifflin Drive. I'm addressing the board tonight as a parent with 3 children in our schools who is concerned about next year's plan. Several area school boards have announced their 2021-2022 opening plans. This board has not. It hasn't been mentioned in facilities, finance, or safe schools committee meetings, and it's not on the agenda tonight. The district will receive at least $14.9 million in COVID relief, and I can't find one document that tags that money for your use for any COVID remediation in our schools. If you have a document, I would love it for you to post it on board docs so all of our parents can see it. Speaking of seeing, I, along with many parents, are concerned about the lack of transparency this board has shown, which has led to a 500% increase in this district's request for right to knows, in which our president, Mrs. Stoll, has stated on the April 15th board meeting as a complete waste of money, quote unquote. We still have yet to know the data that you used that led to the decision to keep our schools closed in the fall of 2020, despite the recommendations of our administration and the CDC. And with the feedback from parents to meet the needs of over 75% of our students. The only answer we have gotten in months of requests was from Mr. Fusco, and it was, quote, our comfort level. I ask as a parent and a voter, how can we be comfortable re-electing the board members Casa, Stoll, Fusco, and Roche on May 18th? Thank you.
Okay, up next is Jason Lanier. Jason, I have enabled your microphone. So when you're ready to begin, you can state your name and address and begin your comments, please.
Yes, Jason Lanier, 100 Oak Drive, Lansdale, Pennsylvania. I would echo many of the concerns just brought up regarding the closure and lack of using data to make decisions. I think that argument is going to be won by the people here over here who believe the schools should be open, as I think a lot of this stuff is going to get repealed. So let's table that. And let's look at what has the school board been doing in the interim. While instead of opening the school, they were adopting critical race theory with this anti-racism and the equity as opposed to equality. I don't know if any of the people who are involved with that decision have read through what that means. What does equity mean versus equality? Aren't we to judge kids on the basis of the content of the character, not the color of the skin? And all of this anti-racist equity build is specifically designed to divide the kids into groups and to subjugate certain kids based upon their merit because they don't make the correct racial diversity gap or whatever it is that you need to be met. When did the school board decide to do this? It looks to me you guys decided to do this in July and August of last year, but you didn't bother involving any of the parents. You didn't bother involving the community. We're not interested in this. We're not interested in being racist, anti-racist. Really? What is anti-racism? What is anti-racist? It's irregardless. You know what irregardless means? It means regardless. Anti-racist means racist. It means you look at people's race and you divide them. Every one of you should be ashamed for adopting this nonsense. Do you know what they did in Bond County, Virginia? You know what the critical race theory, the anti-racist mentality did? They're going to eliminate AP courses. That's right. You can't, if you excel and you don't meet a certain quota based upon whatever equity gap you're looking at, we're just going to eliminate that. What kind of sense does this make? The school board isn't there to be treating our children as if they teaching moral indoctrination. You judge people on the content of the character, not the color of their skin. You all should be ashamed if you're really planning on adopting this. Seriously, maybe you should all resign if this is what you're planning to do. Thank you.
Jason, you're still muted.
Jason Lanier, 100 Oak Drive, Lansdale, PA. Calling in again regarding this critical race theory. A couple of the speakers after me, Ms. Wilson, Mrs. Talbot, I believe were their names, if I remember correctly, mentioned me having some kind of privilege because why? What I'm saying is I was unprivileged. I did not know that this was going to be implemented. What is the presumed privilege that I have? I do not know. And I went quickly and looked through the critical race theory information that was sent out to the district. And I found some pretty interesting things. And it basically seems to be judging people based upon their race and including people based upon their race, disincluding people based upon their race. My conversation about the AP courses going away wasn't my presumption. It wasn't presumption of any of the kids in AP. It was in a conversation about anybody in the National Honor Society. None of that. What it is looking at other school districts that have implemented critical race theory, what has gone on? They're a little ahead of us in terms of this. What is going on currently? Currently, they're removing AP courses. So I listened to this whole conversation about getting college credits from these universities while in school. I applaud that. That's fantastic. That is opportunity that is allowing kids to excel beyond their station. They can work harder. They can advance at a discounted rate. That's a great thing to implement. What is not a great thing to implement is start subdividing people based upon their race, which is exactly what this critical race theory stuff does. I don't know if anybody knows where critical race theory initiated, but it's from critical theory, from the Frankfurt School out of Germany, pre-World War II. Afterward, it was actually going to be called the Marxist School of Education. I don't think this is something that we need to implement in our school system. I don't even think we need to socialize grades. We need to segregate people based upon what they look like or what they think. I don't think that's appropriate. The job of education or public education is to get school kids prepared for life beyond childhood. It isn't to make them feel badly about themselves. It isn't to presume some person has no agency based upon their color, and that other races are going to be able to give them agency. This is all really bad stuff. This needs to be a judgment of a person's character. Dr. Martin Luther King, when I grew up, this is what was taught. You base your perception of a person is on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And this looks to do exactly the opposite. Thank you very much.
Up next, we have Lauren Wilson. Lauren, I've opened up your mic, so when you're ready to begin, state your name and address and begin your comments.
Hi, Lauren Wilson. I'm at 114 Thames Drive, North Wells, PA 19454. I just wanted to call and say how much I enjoyed this meeting. I mean, I loved all of the conversation around setting consistent standards around homework. I love the discussion about being more open and transparent around what we're doing and how, in terms of getting kids additional access to college courses in high school. This is what we need in North Penn. This is.
Up next is Katie Strayhorn. Katie, I've enabled your microphones. You're ready to begin. State your name and address and begin your comments, please.
My name is Katie Strayhorn. I'm at 213 Fernwood Court in Harleysville. And as a parent who has a child in the district and then who has also pooled my children and my tax money to cyber charter schools because of the disappointment in the quality of education that North Penn had exhibited, I just would love to know how we are equipping our teachers to be better teachers. I know that there's been such an emphasis on this culturally responsive instruction and education during the in-service days and the professional development, but I just wonder how we're missing educating the entire population and really addressing the strengths and the needs. The gap is getting larger and larger. I'm blessed to be able to stay home with my children and to be able to facilitate learning with them. But there's a lot of families who cannot do that. And so I just wonder how the board is going to address trying to equip the teachers to better educate. I have a daughter that sits in an auditorium for an hour and a half. And some days she doesn't even have to turn in work, which is unacceptable. You don't go to a job and not turn in work. You do your work and it's expected of you. However, because we have shortages of teachers and subs and teachers that are not coming into the buildings, these children are just getting funneled. Another neighbor of mine had her son supposed to sit for 3 hours in the auditorium and just do my work. I just would love to know what the board is going to do to hold our teachers accountable and to also equip them to be the best that they can be. This district is excellent. I've been through it since kindergarten and I brought my kids to here. And I just would love to know what we're going to do to make this a better experience for all children, no matter what. Thank you so much.
Is Jason Lanier. Jason? Give it a second here. I apologize. There we go. When you're ready to begin, you can unmute your mic, state your name and address, and begin your comments, please.
Jason Lanier, 100 Oak Drive, Lansdale. Two separate topics. Actually, they're kind of tied together as some of the other speakers just before me were bringing them nicely together. But I'll do a little bit more abruptly here. The critical race theory nonsense that you guys are introducing into the curriculum, the Marxist mentality of BLM and critical race theory. Why are you doing this? I don't understand it. If you would only have some intellectual curiosity and look to see where this is derived, you would surely see it. Why do we want to segregate kids based upon race? Why do we want to make one group of kids feel poorly about themselves while telling the other group of kids that they can't do anything because they're victims? Why do you want to do this? I do not understand. And look at other districts around the country and see what happens to those districts as they implement this nonsense more and more and more. Second,
a continuing basis. The last thing I want to say is, as it relates to critical race theory, I agree with Mr. Lanier that I'm so glad we don't teach that here. I am so glad we don't teach critical race theory, and I'm so glad we continue to teach American history, Black history, and the truth about our systems here and what's happening and what has happened in this country, whether it relates to any student. And I'm glad we don't teach that because I agree that would be wrong. And I'm so glad that our curriculum, that our district is recognizing that. And I'm proud of the culturally proficient materials we continue to put through from the Office of Curriculum and Equity. A lot of work still to be done, but I agree we shouldn't be going down that route. We should continue down the path of teaching American history, Black history, and the truth, because the truth is always right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson.
We do have another hand up online. So up next will be Chris Carroll. Chris, I've enabled your microphone. So when you're ready to begin, you can state your name and address and begin your comments, please.
Thank you. This is Chris Carroll at 820 Sullivan Drive. Just a point that may help to shed some light on a topic addressed by the last two speakers. I think it would be very beneficial to the community if we did get more visibility into the cultural proficiency and equity training. I think if there are misconceptions, they can easily be dispelled. And I think it's a lot of angst is created by the topics of critical race training, critical race theory. And it is unfortunate that there are other institutions that use words like cultural proficiency, equity, and inclusion to mean things other than what they should be, and that's a coming together. We have a very incredibly diverse community in North Penn and have for quite some time, and I do believe that's one of our strengths. So I would like to see more from the board of opening a window into what exactly is being taught in the cultural proficiency and equity program. And again, I hope that may dispel any misconceptions that are out there. Until then, unfortunately, we are left to draw our own conclusions, and they may not necessarily be the right ones.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. I think that was the point Mrs. Wilson made on her first public comment as well. So I think we can accommodate that moving forward. We do not teach critical race theory, no matter how many times Mr. Lanier says it. So thank you for that. Are there any other comments? Oh.
Hi, Jazzy Ann Tolbert. I live in Montgomery Township. I was going to echo the same thing. I made a comment at the last board meeting that I think a forum in which parents could understand exactly what is being taught would be helpful for the community, because that instance about critical race theory being taught in the schools does come up at every single board meeting. So I think that would be helpful. On another
One
That's
comment as well, and that is, I do think it's important for us to continue to keep the community and up to date with what we're doing with regards to equity. But we also have some great resources in past meetings that have been recorded, great work done in the ECI committee, great work done in policy. We're trying to integrate it into every discussion, every committee, so that it touches. So having it in a clearinghouse is a great place, but know that it's really everywhere. So there are great things to go back and look at, great things that have been done, great things that have been written and updated. And so I think there are resources that are there. And yes, I think then bringing and giving a summary and kind of highlighting it is something that we can also do as well.
And unless I'm mistaken, Dr. Bauer, there is discussion about an equity forum. Am I correct about that?
Yes, I believe. Why is the name escaping me? If anybody else can help
We're
me.
having
A summit.
we're having a summit, but the summit is not a forum as we've had in the past. The equity summit is something that I believe they're working on with the teachers. I know that Dr. Waters will be able to speak to that in particular. So, we certainly can look at, we've had forums in the past. I think that Ms. Ramesh has spoken to this very well, that we've had a lot of forums and a lot of discussion over the past 3 years. And it's important for us to continue those discussions so that we can dispel any of the things that's really being said. It's kind of muddying the waters of the really important work that we're doing. So I think we can certainly begin to have those discussions about a forum. We're working with our Parents in Equity group. And I think we can, continue to talk about that. But the Equity Summit is not a forum where we would be educating the community.
Right, that is taking place over the summer in July, I believe, and it involves staff and some of our parents in the Parents in Equity group.
I do want to clarifying that.
I'm sorry, I think it's Dr. Lois Campbell.
I just want to clarify one thing and agree with some of the comments that have been made a few minutes ago. Parents, please understand, we are not teaching critical race theory in this school district. Never have, and that is not our intention. Critical race theory is not taught in any K through 12 school district in these United States. We're all about culturally responsive teaching. And critical race theory is not even taught to undergrads in college. So I don't know where these parents are getting this from, but the time you take to sit up here and lambast us about critical race theory, which we're not even nowhere near that direction and don't plan to be, it's taught in graduate schools. But the time and effort you take to come up with these theories that you're coming up with, take time to read a book, get off the TV, stop listening to the pundits, stop listening to the sound bites, really find out what critical race theory is. So you'll know that in this district, we are teaching culturally responsive teaching in which we take all.
Dr. Lois Campbell, we lost your sound. Oh. Yeah, and you froze up. But I think Dr. Lois Campbell made her point.
With them is a part of who they are, and it helps them to be better learners. And so that teachers then come from a place of not a deficit of what a student doesn't know, but what a student does know and what they can learn. And ultimately, parents, our goal is to make sure your children are trained and prepared for this global world that they will be in, and not back in the day when all of these crazy ideas about difference came about. And we're trying to make sure that we prepare your children for a 21st century education. And I'm just glad that Dr. King wasn't quoted tonight, because I'm just tired of having Dr. King's words taken out of context when it comes to judging students and people on the content of their character. If you knew what Dr. King stood for, he would be all about culturally responsive teaching. So don't mix up the two. And don't keep coming in here telling us that that's what we're about. We are not. Why would we want white children to feel bad about themselves? Why would we want any child to not be able to get along with other children? That is not what we're about in this district. And some things will come up that parents will know more about what it is we're trying to do. But we're trying to prepare your children to exist in this world, not by some of the misconceptions that their parents have. So I just had to say that. I'm so full of being told that we're teaching critical race theory, and no schools in K through 12 are teaching critical race theory.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis Campbell. Okay. Are there any other comments from school board directors or any admin? Seeing none, then do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Jason Lanier, 100 Oak Drive. So I'm Lansdale. I think I'm supposed to tell my township. In any event, I hear, I don't know all of that, what happened the other day. I kind of loosely know, and I don't want to comment on that directly. What I'd be more interested in is the terms that you guys are using, I think, act to tribalize people, if you will, or have people breaking up in groups, meaning that everything I read about anti-racist tells me that you're segregating people based upon race, or they naturally get segregated because you're saying to one group of people that they are been victimized by another one, or they have cultural appropriations or something along this line, and it causes a natural conflict when you do this. So I'm not, by enacting some of these policies, aren't you in fact sort of planting the seeds of division amongst the students based upon their racial identity or their sexual identity or what have you? I don't, for the life of me, cannot understand what the positivity is in doing this. I'm not talking about understanding people's culture. That's fine. But when you segregate people in such a way that it reads to me, is when I read the literature on anti-racist, it seems like you're causing a division to naturally occur, and that this ultimately will end up in some sort of conflict, and everybody will sit back and look at it and say, what can we do to make this happen? Well, how about not treating everybody as groups of people? How about as individuals? And individuals in every group there's individuals in any kind of group you want to put take into mind that have problems. And it might be from home life, it might be from school, it might be from whatever, but that doesn't apply the entire group in either direction, positively or negatively. So we are all individuals here, and we need to treat people as individual, not treat people broken up into groups. I'm still perplexed by what the goal is here. And I had mentioned before, and I got corrected on this. This is not critical race theory, but I've been reading up on this, and it sure seems like critical race theory. And I would like to hear your guys' comment on how is it that when you do this tactic of separating people into groups and kind of saying that, well, they're not being conscious, they're not being conscious of this aspect of this group, how that's going to end in a positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lanier. Are there any other hands raised, Mr. Gilmer?
There are no hands raised at this time. I think that will conclude public comment.
Mr. Lanier, I would like to state that you seem to be struggling mightily over the last few months with equity and equality and what the goals of this district are. And I really give you a lot of credit for being so honest and asking these questions. I would also like to speak after hearing this for many, many minutes built up over the past few months. That division is in the eye of the beholder.
Jason Lanier, 100 Oak Drive, Lansdale, PA. I've been talking to you guys a while about masking and all the nonsense that was associated, all the scientific data that was out there that would maybe saved a lot of people a lot of hassle that came up and told us about that. Have since told you about that, and you seem to be a little bit more receptive to it. But maybe take some real time to think about what it is that you guys are doing and not reacting to simply whatever is being pushed down by, I don't know if it's the state party or what have you. We talked a bunch about critical race theory, and everyone on the board here denying that you guys are teaching critical race theory and that you're teaching cultural responsive learning or teaching or something along that line. And Mr. Casa pointed me to the PCCY. The woman before us mentioned talking about PCCY and all of the prescriptions, all the diagnosis they found in this book. So here they've researched a lot of studies about performances between different races, different ethnic backgrounds, different income levels. And a lot of that data could be dead on factual. I in fact went through it a little bit more and found the basis for a lot of that information comes from a paper called Race and Economic Opportunity in the United States, an integral perspective. You guys should bother reading this. You take some time, read this and understand what it's saying. Look at what they conclude, because what they conclude in this paper is not what this document tells you to do. You guys have implemented some of the things that they've asked you to implement. And this is critical race theory that they're implementing. You guys might want to say you're doing something else, but when you're doing something that looks like critical race theory, sounds like critical race theory, and acts like critical race theory, it's probably critical race theory. Doesn't matter what you call it. When you say it's all critical race theory that's a great question. No, it's a good question. So basically, when one of the prescriptions in this document, this is a lot of diagnosis, bad prescription. The prescription says what you want to do is divide up the kids based upon what they look like, what their socioeconomic background is. These things are a disaster. This anti-racism is racism. You're separating people by their color and saying one group should be prescribed a different set of circumstances than the other group. All kids are created equal. Kids perform at different levels based upon what they can do. Some need more help, some need less help. But to say that one group of kids needs to be prescribed a certain platform based upon their color, or one group should be eliminated from a party of excellence because of their color, that's just damn wrong. I don't understand why it is that you guys are insisting on doing this. It's been shown across the country. Lots of people are way ahead of you in critical race theory. It's disastrous. You're eliminating AP exams. You're causing problems, strife between kids. You're lining up kids and telling one race should apologize to the other race. This is
Thank you, Mr. Lanier.
This is something that I'm assuming isn't going to be happening here. But if you follow this prescription, this will be happening here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, ready? Good evening. Welcome to tonight's action meeting. We're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so just a reminder that there is a mask mandate here tonight, not just from North Penn, but also from the state. So if you would all, I think everybody is pretty much wearing their mask, so that's good. Mr. Lanier, if you wouldn't mind putting your mask up, I would appreciate it. Please know that if you do not wear a mask, you will be asked to leave, okay? And if you do not leave when you are asked to, that will be considered disturbing a public meeting, and you'll be considered trespassing. So I just want to put that out there. I'll remind you to please put on your mask. Thank you. Mask? You can come up, yes, but please put on your mask while you're walking up.
Jason Lanier, Lansdale Borough. Last week there was a meeting regarding curriculum, and I asked Mr. Fusco about the diversity and inclusion and what that meant, and how do you apply equity to education? And he said the point of equity to education is to close the gap between different racial groups, which I thought was odd in that we're first recognizing kids by their color, which seemed completely counter to what we should be doing. That aside, how is the prescription of understanding that there is differences in kids and then turning around and saying, what we're going to do is create a situation where we separate the kids based upon their race, and we're going to have one group of kids apologizing to the other group? I see you shaking no, that doesn't happen. How about separating kids based upon privilege? Does that happen in the school district? Where you say one group of kids they all line up against the wall, and you have them step forward based upon how much privilege they have. Privilege is defined by the diversity and equity inclusion curriculum or mandates. And everyone step forward, they have to turn around and apologize to the person who didn't get to step up with them. Is that what we're going to do? This is how we gain kids who are falling behind. We get them to be better educated by telling them they can't do anything, and telling kids that have a different situation that they need to be apologetic to the people who have less. That's what we call education? I don't understand this. Are you guys saying that doesn't happen in the school, or you're accepting the fact that it does? Because it does happen, and you know it happens. And why would you possibly want to be doing that? How is it that we spend $78,000 bringing speakers in to teach about diversity and inclusion, but we can't get the AC systems going? I don't understand that.
Thank you, Mr. Lanier. Your time is up. Please put your mask back on.
Madam President.
No, you're not getting 3 minutes.
Mr. Lanier, please put your mask back on. No, it's 2. It's 2 tonight.
Madam President,
Yes?
could I speak?
Sure.
While we don't typically respond to public comment, I do think it's important, just as ECI chair, that I respond because Mr. Fusco was sitting in for me. No board member here nor teacher in this district believes, or I'm absolutely responding to the fact that those things are not happening in this district. No teacher in this district, and I'm an educator, is lining up any children and teaching them that there's something wrong with them based on race or ethnicity. Our teachers are not doing that. Our teachers are highly qualified and trained to teach all children of varying abilities and to understand the differences are what make them great or what make them amazing, whether that's a difference in ethnicity, whether it's a difference in gender, whether it's a difference in just their ability as students. And that's what our teachers are trained to do. And they can do it, and they do it well. And to twist someone's words and make it seem like something is happening here because you watch Fox TV is absolutely ridiculous.
Thank you, Dr. G.
Yeah, I would like to just say for the record, the terminology I used was achievement gap. I didn't say anything about race because that presentation didn't explicitly talk about race. It talked about English language learner status. It talked about culture. It talked about ability, right? Our special needs students, our inclusion program, right? How do we reach the kids in order to teach the kids and close that achievement gap? I've referenced the data. I suggest that we could have a conversation and I could point you in the direction of some of that data to justify it. And like Dr. G just pointed out, this continued assertion that there is some sort of nefarious goings on in our classroom to divide the community is bunk. It's just pure bunk, and I'm tired of it. And it's just not happening.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco. Is there anyone else that wants to make public comment this evening?
Samantha Furry, Hatfield Township. I just want to counteract that. I actually pulled my daughter out of AM Kulp because of the 5th grade teacher who lined those students up from whitest to darkest, made them turn around, and the white ones needed to apologize to the black ones. Now, do not tell me that did not happen, okay, in this district. You need to put an end to this. Kids do not see color, and you are segregating them and you are separating them. This is not okay. Do something or get out of those damn chairs.
As your equity programs, I 100% fully support rising every culture and person in this district. One of the reasons why I moved here was because of the diversity of North Penn that I wanted my children to be exposed to. So I believe in raising every child up. However, my child in 10th grade last year in her aquatics class had to read an article on white privilege and journal why her white privilege or how her white privilege affects her and other people. I believe that that is kind of on the lines of what Mr. Lanier was saying, what Ms. Sam was saying, and I don't believe that that's raising anyone to a higher level, and that is shown in the district's decline in state rankings for the last 4 years. Thank you.
Sophomore at this school. One thing I would like to address is with the race stuff. It is going on in this school. Myself, am a mixed kid, and in 8th grade, my teacher found out, and she praised me for it, but later there was assignments on race, and I gave facts and evidence, and she called me rude and disrespectful for not knowing what mixed kids and what other people of color go through, me being myself one. Now with the Fox comment too, we have classrooms and teachers putting CNN constantly in the background, and you always talk about bringing the communities together, though I've talked to kids and they're terrified to say their political views. They're scared of what other kids will say due to being harassed, not only by them, but also by teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Good evening, North Penn community. My name is Julia Nardone, and I'm an executive editor for the North Penn High School student newspaper, The Night Crier. Here with me is senior executive editor Millen Varia and staff writer Emily Courtney, who will be moderating with me this evening. I would like to welcome you all to the 2021 North Penn School Board election town hall. The
Mr. Roche, I can't agree with you more, as everything you just said really hit home for me. I too have dyslexia. 3 of my children have dyslexia. My father has dyslexia. I was in special ed since 4th grade. I'm very versed when it comes to teaching students with dyslexia. It's something I deal with all the time, and specifically the equitable thing is something I'm also very versed in. The problem I have with the current board is they're not being honest when it comes to dealing with it. They're trying to categorize our students, and I don't understand why they do that, where they put kids in these categories of white, black, gay, straight, and then try to solve the problem as a category. Our students are individuals, and any self-respecting teacher knows that. You cannot solve a class problem. You have to teach the individual to make progress. And when it comes to the honesty issue, this board has repeatedly denied an activity that has taken place at AM Kulp Elementary. Just the last action meeting, we were actually attacked by Dr. G, who referred to Fox News about an event that happened. Fox News didn't tell me that the event happened at A.M. Kulp Elementary. The activity I'm talking about is known as a privilege walk. It happened in the courtyard at A.M. Kulp Elementary, not once, but 4 times. A teacher who had a professional courtesy, I won't say her name, lined the students up on the wall, asked them to step forward if their parents were married, step forward if their parents were college educated, step forward if they own a cell phone or an iPhone, step forward if their skin color resembled one of a Band-Aid, step forward if they had an in-ground pool. Now this teacher carried out this event, and I know it happened because one father told me at the top of my driveway, 4 parents told me over the phone. I sat in the driveway and a mother and father told me the story that happened to their daughter last year. And just Thursday, I sat in the living room and listened to the story verbatim, word for word, the same questions. But she also added at one point when she asked about the Band-Aid with a mini megaphone, the teacher told the student to get back on the wall because her parents were from India. That happened. There are no versions of the truth, Mrs. Stoll. You emphatically said that didn't happen 5 times. It did happen, but yet you still deny that it happened. We have filed a right to know for it. We did it in July. We're still waiting for the results on that because it keeps getting kicked down the can because you know you can run out the clock on the issue.
In terms of equity too, we need to understand something here. The children are individuals. Okay? We need them to walk through the door and not be shown a way that creates divisiveness between the kids. I have children who have approached me at our rallies and conversations about not being comfortable being who they are in class for fear of repercussions from teachers. Our teachers are doing a great job, but when it comes to critical race theory, which was your original question, critical race theory is not supposed to be taught here. Unfortunately, on multiple sides of the equation, some people are taking their side too far. Our job as a board is to put an end to it if we hear that it's happening. That hasn't happened with the example Mike just spoke of.
North Penn Neighbors for Progress, you now have 2 minutes to offer a rebuttal.
Thank you. I find it troubling, Mr. Kennedy, that you would attack a teacher in a forum like this in that manner. Whatever may or may not happen is certainly being looked into and is being addressed by administration. An isolated incident that, again, may or may not have happened is not what we are promising the community will never happen. We do not have the ability to assure everyone that a teacher won't at some point make some error in judgment. What we are promising the community and what the reason why it continues to come forward is because there is a accusation that we are training teachers to do this, that we want our staff to do this, that we want to group them into segments. We've listened for 4 years now to people in different communities in the tapestry that makes up North Penn. We've listened to their shared experience. We've listened to their concerns. We have tried to hear them, and we have tried to sit down through our cultural cadre and through other parent organizations to find ways to address those concerns. And we haven't done it anecdotally, we've done it using data. We've looked at our disproportionality data, and it shows that we have disproportional groups of students not taking AP classes, disproportional groups of students overrepresented in special education, disproportional issues throughout their school experience. You have to reach kids to teach kids. We are looking at the data, and we are coming up with comprehensive solutions like our equity policy, which brings accountability to the district, to this board, about what measures we're taking and whether or not they're working to address benchmark issues like the ones I just enumerated, including improving the diversity among our staff, parent engagement, the materials that we're teaching, and whether or not they're reflective of the experiences of all our students.
Thank you. North Penn Stronger Together, you now have 2 minutes to provide a rebuttal.
Just real quick, Mr. Fusco, I'm sorry if you took that as an attack, and I'm sorry that your feelings were hurt. But imagine how that little girl felt who stepped forward because she had an in-ground pool and was told that she was spoiled by the teacher. Anybody else?
I just want to say that I have
been in the cultural proficiency committee at my elementary school. I have volunteered to be on PI. I've tried to learn what's happening, and I also attended the Equity Summit in August. I sat from 8:30 in the morning till almost 4 o'clock listening to the trainings that are being given to staff and other employees. I don't remember seeing any of you in any of my breakout rooms. I apologize if I'm wrong. One of the things that came out, there was a lot of good information, and that's what it was, a lot of information, including white privilege, including the fact that if you're colorblind, you fall on the on the racist scale. You're one step above a racist if you don't see color. And the implicit bias trainings that are happening. We have mandatory cultural proficiency trainings with our teachers monthly. And it's coming down into our students. My daughter, who's in 10th grade, had to read and journal about her white privilege in her aquatics class. So what you want to call this, if this is cultural proficiency, I don't know. I don't agree with it. Cultural proficiency to me is looking and honoring the diversity of our district. And if somebody's from a different country or a different culture, you recognize that in your lesson plans, you respect that, and you celebrate it. You don't tear it down, you don't privilege it, and you don't oppress it.
Thank you.
Here.
Jason Lanier, Lansdale Borough. I'm here to talk to a couple of board members specifically. Last action meeting, I finished off by talking about critical race theory and privilege walks. And Mr. Fusco and Ms. G said to me that those weren't happening. I can give you the quotes that this is absolutely not happening in our schools. You need to stop watching Fox TV. Mr. Fusco said he was just tired of the bunk. Yet, in the debate, you made reference to the fact, Mr. Fusco, that these were possibly happening, may or may not be happening. It may or may not be happening, or it is happening, and you just don't want to talk about it. This is a problem. Why are you guys implementing this? I suspect it has something to do with, I was for a long time saying the American Federation of Teachers. I heard this is not it. It's not the American Federation of Teachers, it's the NEA, the Pennsylvania State Division of the NEA, giving lots of money to certain candidates. Mr. Casa got something like $90K from the Pennsylvania Education Committee for running for office. I don't know if Mr. Fusco is also running, but he would be getting money as well. So the implementation of this privilege walk does what to benefit kids? This is what I'm wondering. What is many of the things that you guys are implementing to the benefit of the kids? And you tell me you're not implementing CRT, yet you're purchasing books that are proclaiming CRT and backing it and talking about the advantages of it. One of the books you have is Anti-Racist Baby by Abram F. Kendi. Have you guys read what his anti-racist book and what he basically concludes? That there's good racism and bad racism? To me, that doesn't make sense. It's all bad racism. Why do you have these books in the school? Why are you implementing this kind of thing in the school? Why do you look to divide the kids into sections or groups and then pair them against one another in order for one group feel better, one group feel less? How is this benefiting anybody? You really need to come to grips with this. There's a whole lot of books in our libraries which really have no business being there. A bunch of them talk about critical race theory and talking about how good it is. A bunch of them talk about very sexually explicit content. And if there's any parents here who have kids currently in the audience, you might want to step out when people start talking about the books that are in the school district. You'll be glad I'm telling you right now. It's horrifying what you'll read. Thank you very much.
To hold such public office. Some other things. Jason Lanier commented on privilege walks. Yes, I agree with what he said. It happens. in schools. It happens in classrooms, guys. You don't have to say it may or may not have happened, because it happens. I know it happens. I talk to people, talk to parents, students who've seen it. It happens, and I don't agree with it. I don't think privilege walks are constructive at all towards building a multicultural, more understanding community. I mean, think of the kid that's up against the wall, who has nothing, who doesn't move, who doesn't have any of these privileges. How do you think they feel when they see their classmates ahead of them, and then when everyone sees them, they know that this kid has nothing? You know, it just makes people feel bad, and I don't agree with it.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is Stephen Ross. I live in Hatfield Township, and my son and daughter attend AM Kulp Elementary. Last year in 5th grade, my son Ben Ross had Mrs. Chappelle, or Miss Chappelle. He was one of the 60-some students of several classes that were subject to the lineup, or I don't know what they're calling it, the privilege lineup, and questions outside. He came home to us with concern and told us what Miss Chappelle had done, and one of Ben's other teachers had come up to Ben after the fact and asked him what that was all about. You know, he explained to us that they'd line up against the wall, and if they said yes to a question, they were to step forward. And apparently she was speaking to them through like a mini megaphone. I guess one of the first things was she pulled a Band-Aid out of her pocket. I guess it was a tan colored one. Some of the kids stepped forward, some of them didn't. He said that one of the girls in the class got yelled at and told to stand back because she wasn't the color of the Band-Aid. Apparently she was an Indian girl, so didn't quite match the Band-Aid. Then the typical questions: do you have an iPhone? Do you have a smartphone? Blah, blah, blah. Do both your parents work? Are your parents married? Do they live at home? All questions that I just don't find he has to let anybody know what is behind private doors. It's personal information. Besides the fact that it made a lot of the kids feel very uncomfortable in class. I mean, you have kids back up against the wall, middle, and somewhat up front. So, you know, if my son's up front, is he supposed to feel guilty because him and his mom work harder or do the right things? Maybe we get lucky, maybe we don't. Some people don't always get lucky, I get that. But, you know, is my son supposed to feel guilty because he's ahead and they're not? I mean, they all just want to be friends. None of them talk about color or where they're at in their life. Neither did I when I went to school. We were just nice to the kids. We were taught, treat other people how you want to be treated. Nothing was made into this world where we have to make up more stuff to say we have to be equal. I don't get that. But anyway, there were other things. Well, I guess I kind of talked myself out of time here. But we were just wondering if she's going to be held accountable for that, or if you're looking into it or not. If you're not, my wife and I are watching you guys. We're watching the teachers. My kids are watching the teachers and you guys. Everyone in this room is watching you, and everyone watching this live is watching you. So let's do it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Mrs. Rudnick?
Can be Rudnick, Lansdale. I think I can actually answer that question for you. I think they repeatedly said that they are investigating the matter and they are going to do so, and they have been doing so. It's just this regurgitation of just nonsense is beyond me. Now, every time
the privilege walks, who does it benefit? You were told months and months and months ago that this was happening. I went to these meetings. I talked to a couple of times. Ms. Stoll, I talked to you specifically. And I said, if this is happening, will you resign? And you said no. You said, it's not happening. Prove it. Now, how am I to get the proof? You've heard from a number of parents who've had this happen to their children. You had a National Honor student come up and tell you that it's happening. It is happening. Who is it benefiting? How does this benefit anyone? And if you guys are all unanimously voting, do you all unanimously agree this is a good thing, these privilege walks? And if you all unanimously agreed that this is a privilege walk and you called me a liar because I told you what's happening, you said it wasn't it, maybe you should all unanimously resign. There's no reason for this crap. Unanimously, you all agree to do these things. You need to take responsibility for it and tell me why it's beneficial to anyone. Please, I have a minute here. Can somebody change? How is it beneficial? Anybody want to speak?
You're out of order. Mr. Lanier?
Yes.
No, stop.
Mr. Lanier, if you have any more comments,
No, I have 40 seconds. I wanted to hear why it's beneficial.
Your opportunity is to speak, not to stand there in silence. Do you have anything else to say?
I'm not talking to you, Mr. Summers. I'm asking the board whether or not they have some way to describe why this is positive.
Mr. Lanier, we've told you before that we are not here to debate you right now. You
Right.
have public comment.
I know.
So if
You'll wait till I
finished-
sit down, and then you'll sit up, mischaracterize what I'm saying, imply that I'm lying, and yet you've seen people come up and tell you, you've had students come up and tell you, and yet you still tell me I'm lying, and you won't accept responsibility that this is actually happening. Why is that?
Are you finished, Mr. Lanier?
What's that?
Are you finished? Your time's up. Go ahead. You're next.
My name is Erin Blanc, and I'm from Hatfield. So this is in response to some comments tonight. We've gone from it didn't happen, it definitely didn't happen, you're lying, to it may have happened, we're investigating, to yes, it happened, students telling us it happened, a parent telling us it happened. I need to know that my kids will not be subjected to an activity that makes them feel terrible in school. I don't want them to be subjected to an activity that makes their classmates feel terrible about themselves in school. I don't really care what the questions are. I know how it made children feel. I talked to 6 of the parents, okay? I know a lot more than you think we know. I talked to a whole bunch of them, and the story was the kids came home crying, and we never want that in school. And so I need to know that my kids will not be subjected to that activity. And